Sanje Shaja Toba Jagalabe, Yong Sesame, Kobanala, Kuma Chungkuna, Kobana Sugar. Kuchundu, Chenhu Yabanama, Traba Chuba Martin, Pay Chambers of Jetrum. Anna Jevi said, Loni is the Utsension, Jesse, Navigin, Zoena, the Tepolo, Mongol, Tena, Java Mongolia. Tena Loni is Tawani, Bayatawajabe. So just so much Sanji. Judge Tamabat, you. Today, Tuba, Message, Maransunaji, Tioba, Anakuba, the Kiani, Subaji, Yasanji, Tunze, or Ramato, Shampoo, Turkey, Nabatan, Sanji, Jabari, Jijichia, in our Canada, Telegic, Tiwaji, somebody, Chasanji, not to stem.
So, Shakyamuni Buddha has shown shown a manifestation which which fits the mind of ordinary people of that time. He has taken the birth as a human being, first like an ordinary human being, remaining in the womb of the mother, and after coming out from the right side of the mother, and then growing step by step, growing up step by step, and gradually learning the necessary working, and after renouncing it and taking an ascetic life, and then making effort in meditation, and then attaining enlightenment, and then teaching for many years until the age of 80, and then passing away. So he has shown such a manifestation as if he started right from the very beginning, stage, as a very ordinary person, gradually developing through the stages and attaining enlightenment in that life. But that has a special purpose. It is for the benefit of the sentient beings that he has shown this gradual process of development, and born as an ordinary person. But in reality, the secret life of the Buddha Shakyamuni, he has already attained long time ago enlightenment in the form of Sambhogakaya, and that manifestation, who taking birth as a prince, is one manifestation showing those deeds. And although in this world the Buddha Shakyamuni, his manifestation as from the ordinary sight or from the ordinary vision, has gone and passed and disappeared and can no more not be seen anymore. But in reality, at the same time now, in this time, Buddha Shakyamuni in countless other worlds. In some, he's just now being born. In some, he's just now showing the deed of enlightenment. In some, he's passing away. Some, he just started to teach, and in somewhere he is in meditation. At the same time, at this very moment, all these things are happening in countless worlds throughout the universe. So therefore, these kind of deeds of Buddha, they are like how do you say, like creation magic. For example, if one makes effort from one's own side and purify the hindering obstacles, and attain, for example, the the first stage on the path is a path of accumulation, the stage of accumulation. When we attain that stage, immediately we are in front of Buddha. We can perceive directly, get a vision, direct contact with Buddha. Right now, here we don't need to go anywhere, travel anywhere else. The Buddha is always present right in front of us.
NgalSo chiro jemru jibu chip chene be mane chudan chege sunye go la sanje gun jeyage susu le me na yo gashela lama gashela kembo lama la gewe shin gashela be kala kansam terege be me na ba chele tru ni chyo yo ne senje ngazo me chi ge donda la chuba taye ba den zeban ze shin ba yo.
So although ordinary beings like ourselves and not the karma or not the ability to be benefited from the directly from the supreme form of a Buddha, but still we are very fortunate and to have the chance to have the opportunity to come in contact with other manifestations of the Buddha in form of masters and in form of teachings and so on. These are all a deed of Buddha.
Today is a thing Jemmy, Rana Susula Galeva Mado, Sanje cook, then Damad and
So other unfortunate beings, unfortunate people, because of their own karma, they do not come in contact with the Buddha or with the manifestation of Buddha, and so it is completely dependent on our own side, on our own karma and our own sort of preparation of and attitude. On our own side, from the side of the Buddha, it doesn't require any effort or any preparation.
Better
For example, when moon rises in the sky, then rises up in the sky, then its reflection can be seen in it reflects in all water on the ground, in ponds, in big lakes, or in the river, even inside little dew. Do you call it dew? Inside little dew on the tip of the grass. So everywhere, without any effort, without any arrangement, it's just it reflects there. And of course it depends whether there is a clear or unclear reflection. Depends completely on the water. If the water is agitated, the reflection may not be very clear. If it is if the water is pure and calm and clean and still, then the reflection is very clear. And if there is no water, of course, moon cannot reflect in rock or in earth or on the house and so on. And for the moon, it has no thought, it has no intention, it has no thought to send a reflection or to send how many reflection or one reflection or many reflection. It has no arrangement from the side of the moon. It has no thought, no intention whatsoever. It happens spontaneously. So in the same way, the Buddha's manifestation, different forms like Sambhogakaya or Nirmanakaya, also in the Nirmanakaya, also the supreme forms of Nirmanakaya or ordinary forms of Nirmanakaya appears. They appear according to the level of according to the state of the mind of the sentient beings, and depending on how much obstacles or hindrance they have in their mind, and it's not dependent to the actual form of the Buddha. Kyabje Rinpoche is not, he can quote a lot of sutras and verses, but that takes time and it's also difficult to translate, or then that needs to be again explained, and so he will not cause the complication. And also in the sutras they have given the example like Indra, the lord of gods, when he sits in his divine mansion in Tritrimsha, then his form appears everywhere on the floor, on the ground, in the heaven, everywhere his reflection can be seen everywhere, and in some very clear, very distinct, in some not so clear, depending on how clean the floor, whatever it is. It doesn't require any effort to the Indra to send his reflections. So the Lord Maitreya has said in his teachings that like the Indra's form appears on the ground of the heaven, like that the form of the Buddha appears on the clear ground, on the pure ground of in the mind of the sentient beings, and the degree of purity or the clearness depends on the purity of the mind. If the mind is very pure, very free from obstacle, then the Buddha's form also appears very, very distinct, very clear. And if it is a little bit defiled, then also the appearance of Buddha is also less clear, or maybe in ordinary forms. Or if there is a very much obstacle, then it causes the Buddha's form cannot, for the moment, cannot appear. So it depends on the degrees of obstacles. And also in the Tantra it says like the moon, like the moon in the water, it appears wherever there is a ground, wherever there is the proper ground. So, which means for the Buddha there is no effort and no intention. So since we don't have very much time, Rinpoche will not tell any more stories.
다 제외인데 생인데 하지 고래요.
So,
걔들 챙그래도 나에 투지를 아유 메서요. 네, 드래그 도가 용지를 먼저.
so that was explanation about a very brief explanation about the omniscience of the mind of the Buddha, or the wisdom of the Buddha, and now there is still another aspect of the Buddha mind, that which is compassion. Although wisdom is perfect and completely is perfect and complete, but if compassion is lacking, then there may still be chance that Buddha may not help ourselves to us.
상계의 두 제외인데 먼저 최소 도야요 말이 때려보지 돈이 세기나 아마 지가 보고야고 지급에 갈느냐 뭐 보고야고 쉬우지요나 아마데 보고도 셔서 그세요. 대체가 대자동 첨부 다 지금 상계의 먼저 정말로 제가 돼요.
So the Buddha's compassion is immeasurable. It is beyond our comprehension. However, to explain it in our level of compassion, then for example, if a mother has a child, and only one child who is very agreeable, very obedient, very agreeable, and agreeable in every respect, and then there's no question that that good mother, would have a very great love and compassion towards this child, and this child would be so dear to her heart. But Buddha's compassion transcends all that type of compassion. It's much there's no comparison whatsoever with our even the greatest type of compassion.
부득이니 뭐지 도지세 나는 싫어지고요나 때 아마도 생기게 돼요.
So if that child one day made a mistake, it has taken poison or something and felt very sick, then it would naturally produce a very great worry, great suffering in the mind of that mother.
아마도 보고 나는 싫어지고 내 콜로스야 탑지요나 그런 거 써있는 판밤에가 또 다다니에 또 삼으로 셔져 침무지 열당.
She would not hesitate at all if there is a possibility to make her child better, then she wouldn't hesitate, even if necessary, to sacrifice her own life.
Today I may shut that tele Sanjay to give senior Tamji so Musin Sinja Tamji to Zewadi or that take Jata don't try the heart to be
So of course such compassion is very great, and very such concern is very altruistic and very great. However, Buddha's compassion towards all sentient beings, equally towards all sentient beings without exception, up down to the smallest insect, the Buddha's concern and constant attention on all those sentient beings surpasses all such compassion, such type of compassion. And also all different forms of the manifestation of Buddha, such as Shakyamuni or Tara or Yamantaka or whatever, there are so many different forms with different names. But they are all one being. They are all one being with one nature, just like one person. They are not many different individuals. So here again, Rinpoche could quote a verse, but the meaning of this the verse is that in the world there are many, on the land there are many rivers, many streams in different forms. Also, some are very pure, some are not so pure, and there are so many rivers and streams flowing on the ground.
추인나라 소차만 우치고 말이 추치하는 소차망아 요와나라 요와 소차 요요 되세 배편로요.
And those rivers and streams on the ground are inhabited by different beings. In the big rivers are placed for many animals, and small streams, little streams are for less animals.
다가 나장 알아서 간 걸로 가가리. 알겠어. 맞지는 수상가 가가체. 추 놈의 추 나신시. 그래 야니요. 가시 삼바송, 가시 삼바교, 가시 추 전부 가시 추 추주지. 가시 그 시제 망고를 편도. 가시 시제 용용의 편도. 로사야 가가, 로사야 가가.
In the same way, we are now, as an sentient being, we are all different. We are many individuals with different qualities, different personalities, and different capacities, and also different qualities of the mind. Some have a more virtuous state of mind, some are less virtuous, or some can benefit more people, some less. And like this, we are very different in all our qualities and capacities. So, like those rivers and streams, when they are on the land, they are different, they are known with different names, and they have different purpose, different use, and so on. However, when they all lead, they all fall into the ocean. And once they are in the ocean, they are all mixed. They have no difference anymore in the qualities, and they are used equally by all countless sentient beings living in the ocean, and has a great use for all a great number of the sentient beings. And there is no difference left anymore, or regardless of the source. In the same way, although now we are different individuals with different capacities and so on, but when we attain enlightenment, ultimate state of full enlightenment, we all sentient beings who attain enlightenment unite. They unite and become one, emerge into one with no difference left at all. And also, when one Buddha helps, one manifestation Buddha helps, it is the help of all the Buddhas. And in the same way, when we pray to one manifestation Buddha and ask the help of one, appeal to one manifestation Buddha, in fact, we are praying to all the Buddhas, although we don't know their names or their forms and so on. One manifestation represent all the manifestations. So by understanding these qualities of the Buddha, then we should generate a very sincere and a very a deep faith and confidence in the Buddha, to all the Buddhas, and then we prepare from our side. We extend this the link or the relation from our side, as if instead of remaining completely closed, like a pot put upside down, but instead of that we put it upright in the right direction, so that the light of the blessed Buddha can shine through. And for example, when the sun shines in the sky and illuminates everything without any discrimination, and it illuminates everything on the ground. However, there are certain birds, or certain animals, certain birds who becomes blind and cannot be benefited, or cannot see, cannot stand the light of the sun. In the same way, the Buddha, the fully enlightened mind of the Buddha, shines constantly, radiates constantly with these with the rays of the compassion, wisdom, and so on, through many manifestations. But the beings with the unfortunate beings with very heavy unwholesome karma, and they turn away from it, or they close themselves, they close the door. So with this understanding this fact, if we turn towards Triple Gem with all our heart and entrust completely with full confidence, then a very good refuge, or very true refuge, is taking place. So if a very good and very correct refuge generates in our mind, by the power of itself, much of our unwholesome actions or unwholesome karmic imprints will be purified. And if the unwholesome karmic imprints are purified, then we do not have to experience the fruit of that, such as taking rebirth in unfortunate realms. And also taking refuge, by taking refuge we can accumulate great number of merit. The merit is very accumulation of merit is very important, because if somebody has a good stock of merit, then that person will be successful in all his wishes. And also one who takes refuge, who has a very strong refuge, will not be harmed by any human or non-human or animals and so on. It happened one time. There was a girl who went into the forest to collect flowers, and she came across with she been attacked by a snake, and that snake completely coiled around her body, and squeezed her completely in her with its body. Then she couldn't do anything, she couldn't remember anything, and only thing what she really a thought came in her mind, because she heard before that the people saying that there is a deity which is very helpful, who is called Tara, a goddess who is called Tara, who is very helpful in everything. So she immediately that she remembered that, and she remembered that saying, and then she called, she cried for Tara. She took refuge in Tara. And then what she saw was a big bird came from above, and that's all what she saw. And as soon as the bird came around, then the snake fell on the ground and left her. And also her, although she has been bitten and so on, and it was a very poisonous snake, but instead of being harmed by this, she felt even better than usual, and very blissful sensation, and also very radiant and so on. And so this bird, she of course could not see, had not the karma to see real form of Tara, but in fact that bird came by was a manifestation of that answer to her prayer. In the same way, there are other incidents where the Tara has helped different beings in different troubles. Like somebody was suffering from meeting an elephant, and another time it was with a lion, and again there was another time many people, the house caught fire and people were burned inside, where they again prayed to Tara, and the rains fell on them, on the house, and extinguished the fire. And again another time some people, the merchants, had trouble in the ocean, and again Tara saved, and somebody was drowned in the water, again Tara appeared, and like that there were many incidents like that where Tara, a manifestation of the Buddha, helped the sentient beings when they really, sincerely, from the depth of the heart, take refuge in her. So that was a brief explanation on taking refuge, and now after taking refuge we must keep the precepts of the refuge. And so the precept of refuge, the first precept of refuge, the precept of taking refuge in Buddha is one should respect all type of representation of Buddha in whatever form they are, in form of statue or painting, drawing, regardless of its material quality, either it's made of gold or wood or on a piece of paper, or whatever they are, should not be abused, we must respect them equally as true manifestation of Buddha. If one, each morning when one sees a figure of Buddha, if one, with a deep respect, if one looks at the Buddha and praise and generate very deep faith and take refuge, then although the statue itself is not a Buddha, but since it represents a Buddha, and by paying this kind of respect, then we accumulate, it leaves an imprint in us in the future to perceive directly a million forms of the Buddha, as simultaneously to perceive a million forms of the Buddha in the future. So most important, the precept of refuge is to abstain from unwholesome actions and try to accumulate as much as one can, practice the virtuous, the wholesome actions. If we follow these precepts, then we would not experience the sufferings of unwholesome action, sufferings of the unfortunate realms. So, so that is the path of the small scope, and the main goal of this path is to attain fortunate status in the samsara. So if we ask if that is enough, it is not at all enough. It is still very temporary freedom or a temporary goal, but we must still make progress, develop our mind to go further. So as a result of wholesome actions, we may take rebirth as a human being again, maybe 1 time or 2 times, 10 times, or 1,000 or more. But still, it is not. It is still not a real security for us, because as long as we are in the samsara, we are bound. We are subject to degeneration, because under the influence of the delusions we still have in our mind, we can at any time accumulate certain unwholesome actions, and as a result of that we can still degenerate. So therefore, until we are completely free from the cycle of conditioned rebirth, there is no real moment of freedom. So as long as we are in the samsara, not only because the sufferings of unwholesome actions are not, that's not only suffering. Even if we take rebirth as a human being, in human life also there are so many sufferings. It's not a real solution. It's not a complete solution. Human life, human rebirth, although it's called fortunate rebirth, but itself is bound to many difficulties.
코아데나라 내 전체라 동해바 빠도메바 여바디 당가는 줄리딩래 냥바데 하고르데 동해데 상우동.
So we know much of these sufferings by our own experience, and it is important to meditate or to think about those sufferings.
그 동해 상우동은 코알이 준대 용을.
The more we think or meditate, be aware of the sufferings of the samsara, our desire or the wish to be free from suffering would be more sincere. So when the desire or aspiration to liberate from the samsara generates in us, then it automatically leads us to practice the three trainings or the three shikshas, which is the actual method to get out of the samsara. So if one develop those trainings or those that path in one's mind, then one will liberate. One will be liberated. So, for example, if somebody is in prison, and if that person thinks that this prison is a wonderful place to live, it's a very agreeable, very nice, if the person keeps on thinking that in a way, the thought to get out of it or to escape or to get out of it would never occur in his mind. And on the contrary, if the person really sees all the disadvantage of living in the prison, the more he thinks about this, more desire will arise in him to get out of that place as soon as possible. So when we contemplate on the sufferings of the samsara, we should meditate on the general sufferings of the samsara and then particular sufferings of each realms. So concerning the particular sufferings, which has already explained those particular sufferings of the lower realms, now we need to know a little bit more about the sufferings of the fortunate realms. So this general, the sufferings of the samsara in general can be summarized in 8 sufferings sometimes, or in 6 sufferings, but there's no need to go into details. In short, there are certain few principal suffering. The first is the suffering of uncertainty. And so this uncertainty means in the samsara, the samsaric friends and enemies is completely uncertain. An enemy or a person who one considers as one's real number one enemy, or somebody one will really dislike, can also can change to a friend, and also a very best, dearest friend can also change, are subject to change to somebody very disagreeable. So therefore, this kind of samsaric relations are not permanent, and they are subject to change. So actually there doesn't exist an enemy, because since we are born alone, and when we were in the womb of the mother there were no enemies, and so there is no real enemies. But then after our birth, gradually as one grows up, then one due to many circumstances, and due to other sentient beings, also the material possessions and this and that, they gather around us. That produces enemies and such things. And then although the so-called friends or the beings or beings on one's own side, like one's own friends and families and relatives and so on, although we are usually very we hold the relation very permanent, and we have strong attachment and so on, especially in a family, like in a household life, in a family life, then they're like wife and husband. They're two different persons, came from two different sources, then come together and decide to share the life together. And at first there is it is a great pleasure, and it is very agreeable. Then again, it does not remain all the time agreeable and pleasant, because every now and then comes the arguments and disputes, and sometimes it can also end up with big troubles. In the same way, the material possessions that we gain, and also the high positions in the society that one can attain, all these seem to be also very agreeable in some ways, but these also can cause great sufferings and difficulties to oneself, and they may also they are also subject to change, as it is very, as we see very often what happens with the people. Somebody who has reached a very high position then again falls down completely, and has to suffer some very embarrassing situations and so on. So all these kinds of status that we attain in the samsara, also wealth, for example, can somebody can become very wealthy, but then after some time they're all robbed or lost in some ways, and can become totally poor and lacking everything and so on. So these kind of samsaric perfections are not everlasting. And one of the biggest faults or the suffering of the samsara is non-satisfaction. In samsaric, that is the characteristic of a samsaric perfection, is the more we get, more we want. And there's no real, no moment of satisfaction. Even, for example, wealth, first one one thinks, if I would get this much, then I will be satisfied. But one day gets that, then one automatically wants a little bit more, and it goes on and on. And then one's activities and involvements also expands and extends so much, and after they become more and more complicated and difficult to stop, and this way there's no satisfaction. So the non-satisfaction or this discontentment we have, that is one of the heaviest fault or the suffering in the samsara. It's because of that so that sort of enslaves completely every sentient beings, and so they have to, till the end of their life, till the death brings a real end, then there's no end of activity at all. Not only we are unsatisfied with what we have, but we also desire things. We desire things which are which we have no right to have, or which belongs to the others. Then if somebody else has something beautiful, some object, then we want that, and thus we that produces the covetousness. Covetousness or covetousness? There's covetousness, desiring everything for oneself, and then it can produce such attitude. Such dishonest attitude could lead to great disasters. So if one doesn't have anything and one is very poor, that is again a suffering, because then one always one doesn't have enough to live, and then one is always dependent on others for one's needs, and one may not get easily what one really needs, and then always one is abused, or one has to suffer very much humiliation from the others, and so on. So that is to be completely poor and have nothing is also a cause of suffering. So therefore, if we have not, there's the suffering. If we have, that again causes suffering. And so like that, in the samsaric life, one spends samsaric life and with this kind of trouble and involvement, and spending one's time with very much very much preoccupation and with worries, and then sometimes we have to be very aggressive. Sometimes we have to conform very unwillingly to other people, wishes of other people, and so on. And sometimes we must flatter other people, and this and that. This way we spend our life which goes very quickly.
Tana Langa Jachisa Chilla Tadina, Kashian Dugre, Kashaman Dugre, Kashabasun, Teo, Susan Dugre, many really similar to that Duju Kennedy, Mandune, Tita, they always said they shut up.
So if we take awareness, for example, if we watch the great traffic and people going around on the street and all the great number of cars rushing about, all those people running around and keeping busy and running around, each one has his own preoccupation, each one has his own something to achieve, something to he's seeking, some kind of happiness he's seeking, or sometimes suffering, there's some type of suffering that he wants to get rid of. For that very purpose, everyone is running in his own way.
Susun debe tanji drogu yode, debe tanti lukao yode. Keji ayumasu tsumbache, songja, kema yumbache, pulvecha. Tando ja arasu, sa shingala yuguche. Tando ma yumba tolas, be tolal chi, gale tije. Daga naji gibe, kanta kongi tandala tsumne, te manruga tola, tele lusi, dumeji chi, tele magu yode.
And so, for the sake of one's well-being and for happiness and to get rid of suffering, the beings engage in various professions and activities, such as in trade, in business, and in farming, and so on. The various different kinds of careers, and all most of the time they face problems, and they face great disappointment, and by bankruptcy and or certain drought for a farmer, for example, with a drought or certain natural disaster or anything like that. It's not possible that always things work as one plans or as one wishes. So each person has their own certain objects, a certain goal or aim to achieve, but it's quite rare that somebody really achieves everything as one wishes. That is quite seldom. And even if it's achieved, it is achieved with not easily, but with with great effort and hardships. And so not only there are sufferings like this outside, then again inside, for example, in one's own home or in one's own place also, there are a lot of little problems. And to maintain a peace, to maintain the peace of the mind, or to remain really with a peaceful and happy state of mind is quite rare. It does not happen very often. Because one has constantly, one has certain responsibilities for oneself, or for one's family, for one's children, and so on. There are many heavy responsibilities that must be fulfilled. So this kind of these activities then occupy our mind, very much of our mind. So if those people with whom one is sharing their life, like one's family, or relatives or children, and so on. If they live harmoniously, a very friendly relation and very warm relation, very harmonious relation, then the suffering is much less. But sometimes it happens that although they share the life together and live together, but there's no harmony, and sort of there is great suspicion, great uncomfortable feelings about each other, and so in such case, then to live to be together adds to the problems or sufferings, and so all these are not foreign to us. They are all very quite evident, and we know it with our own experience. And then then there are the general sufferings, which occurs to everybody without with no difference. The suffering of illness, disease, suffering of old age, sufferings of then death after some time. So this then again brings a lot of problem and a lot of suffering, physical and mental sufferings to person oneself, as well as to his friends and so on. So it is important for us to be aware of these sufferings and to recognize them, to understand them. That is very important, because most of the time a greatest mistake is although we have in reality we have these problems and we have very much sufferings, and very much sufferings now and also in the future, but we mistake it sometimes into type of happiness, and we think certain things in our life as the ultimate goal or ultimate happiness and so on, and with this mistake then we accumulate very much karma. Of course, since we lack the such capacity of the mind like clairvoyance, which we can see our past and our future. But if, for example, if a Buddha was present, or if some great arhats are present, then they could tell our past and future, and it would be quite disturbing. If we know our past and future, all the lives that we have taken in the past, and actions that we have committed, and futures, what may happen to us, then could be very sometimes could be very disturbing. At the time of the Buddha, there was an Indian family who had a little pond behind their house, and where they keep the fishes, and each time when they want to eat fish, then they take one fish from there and they kill it, and they cook a dish.
고 돈들은 지고요. 지고인서 냐리 샤다지 양고가 보트 군주 출래사 양고 냐리 지고요.
And the father of this family died and has taken rebirth in that very pond as a fish, and all his family members were fishing it and eating it, and then again it's taken rebirth again back there, and then again they're fishing it and eating, and it was repeating like that. And the house mother died, and she has taken rebirth as a puppy of a dog they had outside their house. And then the son, who's now the main the person in the family, got married. He had a bride from somewhere, and he got married. But this wife was not very faithful one, so she had some secret relation with someone else in another family, in another house. Then someday this her husband knew about this relation, so he got very mad, and he went and fought with this other person, and he killed the other person. And that person who the son has killed has taken rebirth as their own child. And so after all, every whole family gathered there, and that that person was holding very dearly this child on his lap, which in fact was his enemy, his real enemy, which he has killed. And then they were enjoying this delicious fish meal, which in fact is his own father. And his mother, who was taken birth as a dog, was from time to time was coming in the house looking for some bone of her own husband. But they were, when it's disturbing too much, then the son was kicking that dog, tried to chase that dog out, which is in fact his mother. And so all this thing was going on. And then the great Arhat disciple, the great disciple of Buddha, the great Arhat Shariputra, one day came by for collecting alms, and when he saw this family, and he immediately, out of his clairvoyance, he could see all their past, how it really is, their relations are, and he thought this he said samsara is disgusting. So he said, the one who eats the flesh of his own father, and shouting at the mother. So because this fish is their father, and that dog is their mother, which he is kicking and abusing. And the most disliked enemy is so well cared, very preciously, very dearly on his lap.
초모 추후 루바차스 초모기 그래 초가 그리고서도 저 치디 초마리 방에마 그래 아마 냐디 그래 바버리 제가 냐요 루바데 군주 삼아도 유자 치서요 치디가 사야 루바데 그런 초가를 제가 아마 그런 게 초가 나도 바겐이래 제가 초모 추후 루바차스.
And then the third line is the one, the wife who is chewing the bone of his own, her own husband. That means this dog is chewing, try to get some bones of that fish, which in fact was reincarnation of her husband. And then koechul gemotro, that means the samsara is laughable, or samsara is strange, and so that means that Shariputra finds this scene of the samsara is so unreliable, something so disappointing. So in the same way, we also, of course, with lack of clairvoyance, then we don't see our own all these secrets that we have too. But otherwise, it could also be very funny, or could be very, sometimes shocking ones too. And so anyway, so in the samsara, as long as we remain in the samsara, even as a human being, we have all these kind of sufferings or dissatisfactions we have by not accomplishing what we are looking for. So even somebody who is very simple and very poor, and he also has his own problems and sufferings, and somebody who is very high, very important, like head of a country, like king or a president and so on, who has to look after the welfare of the whole country, they also have so many problems and spend their day and night thinking about every ways and means. And each time when they try to accomplish something, there arises obstacles, there are hindrances by some other side, some other group or other people who does not in agreement, and so it can be another nation, another country, and sort of harming each other, fighting each other, and also causing great destroying each other and so on. There are sufferings in every level, from between two individual persons up to the great mass of people.